Once again, the cloud of oppression began to blanket the free. The world was at war, and the forces of liberty were called upon to defend the freedoms that they cherished. For years, the war waged in two fronts, as the two forces wound themselves ever tightly in a vicious struggle. On one island in 1945, two sides in this battle of ideologies would wage a battle that would come to immortalize the struggle. The Imperial Japanese Army had entrenched themselves into the island of Iwo Jima and into their beliefs. The Allied forces assailed the island, pushing through despite the fiercest fighting the war had ever seen. On the fifth day, a small group of men made their way up a small mountain on the southern tip of the island. There they raised the banner of freedom. Forces of liberty had stood strong, and the war began to tip in their favor. The American military and its allies had defended the cause of freedom once again.
The Sunday when we came home from church, my mother was going to start preparing dinner and the like, and instead the phone rang, and she was one of her friends that was calling and saying, "Turn on your radio now, the Japanese are bombing Pearl Harbor."
I joined the Army because I felt like you had to serve your country to be a good citizen anywhere.
And this is really why this is called the greatest generation, because of the response that people had, that from having gone through the time of real testing and during the 1930s when they had the depression after the stock market crash, that zeal continued in an ever-increasing amount during the war.
The military offers something very unique, a sense of belonging, a sense of fulfilling something bigger than what we are.
I went to Vietnam in July of '69, which was in the middle of the Tet Offensive. My mother used to send me care packages right after I started getting there.
In August of 1945, while we were still training to be naval pilots, because the military thought that we'd lose hundreds, maybe thousands of naval pilots in the invasion of Japan. But sure enough, on August the 5th, 1945, the atomic bomb was dropped.
While I was in Afghanistan, I had the opportunity to go on it was basically a volunteer mission to a local slum. As we get to the slums, here are these kids, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and they had the most beautiful smiles. They were dressed in their best, their Sunday best, or I guess in their culture, Friday best. But it was amazing to see their joy and their happiness. They didn't know that they weren't living the best life that they could live. They were happy in the moment. And we kicked soccer balls with them. We took pictures, and it was just really heartwarming. It wasn't about a battle. It wasn't about a fight. It was about just giving a little bit of happiness to a group that had probably been overlooked.
Landing at Travis Air Force Base in California and being shuttled to different buses to continue our flights. And began noticing guys on the buses weren't talking, they were looking at the floor, and every once in a while they'd look up. And so I followed their gaze, and off in the distance you could see protesters along the fence. And that was basically, the greeting we got in the States.
When you get on the Freedom Bird coming out of Tan Son Nhut, and you're going back to the world, you're really relieved, I guess. But we landed in McChord, in Washington, and then I got to New York, and my whole family was there waiting for me, and we had a bottle of champagne. Man, it was great.
You need people in the military that love Jesus, to touch kids, to touch people that don't know the Lord, and so it's a message for parents, grandparents. Don't think because the kids are going into the military is for the worst. Sometimes it's for the best.
There are no atheists in the foxholes. That happened in World War I. There were no atheists in the foxhole. World War II was the slogan. And when people face death, the spirit within them is able to help them realize that God the Creator is with them. God the Creator created them, and God the Father, and Jesus Christ the Son, and the Holy Spirit will bring them through any adversity.
I like to say that by God's grace I got to be a Marine, and by God's mercy I'm still standing. And consequently, on active duty and since then, I've met a lot of great guys that have been in the military and enjoyed the camaraderie and visiting with them.
It was a privilege to serve each and every one of you in this audience. It was a pleasure and a joy to serve with the men and women I served with. I have no regrets about my service life. I would do it again.